If you're a physician shopping for disability insurance, the most important words in the entire contract are how it defines the word disability. Here's the short version. An own occupation policy pays you if you can't work in your medical specialty, even if you go take a different job and earn money doing it. An any occupation policy only pays if you can't work in basically any job you're suited for. For a doctor, that gap is the difference between a policy that protects your income and one that probably never pays you a dime. I'm Jack. With Seaworthy Insurance, we place disability coverage for physicians, dentists, CRNAs, and other high-income professionals. And this is the question I get more than almost any other, so let's go through it. Own occupation, sometimes written as own-occ, is a definition of disability that looks at your specific occupation. With a true own occupation policy, the carrier pays your benefit if you can't perform the material and substantial duties of your own occupation. The part most people miss is what happens next. Under a true own-occ definition, you can collect your full disability benefit and still go to work in a completely different field, earning a brand new income on top of it. Picture an interventional cardiologist who develops a hand tremor. She can't safely run a cath lab anymore. That's her occupation and she cannot do it. With true own-occ, she collects her full monthly benefit. If she then takes a teaching position or moves into consulting, the paycheck is hers to keep and the carrier still pays the benefit. That's the whole point of own-occ. For a specialist, your training is narrow and your income depends on it, so the policy protects the specialty itself, which is the thing your earnings actually rest on. Now flip it. An any occupation policy, any-occ for short, pays only if you can't work in any occupation you're reasonably suited for by your education, training, and experience. For a physician, that bar is brutally high. You've got a medical degree, years of training, and a long resume. So a carrier can almost always point to some job you could still do: telemedicine, chart review, utilization management, teaching, administration. If you can do any of those, an any-occ policy can deny the claim because technically you can still work. So that same cardiologist with the tremor, under an any-occ contract, might hear that she's perfectly capable of reviewing charts from home and collect nothing. Same disability and a completely different outcome, all because of one definition. Now, there's a middle category worth knowing about, because a lot of group and employer policies live here. It goes by a few names: modified own occupation, transitional own-occ, or own-occ as long as you're not working. The catch is in that last phrase. These pay you if you can't do your own occupation, but only as long as you don't work somewhere else. The moment you take another job, your benefit gets reduced or offset by what you earn, sometimes close to dollar for dollar. So our cardiologist could collect, but if she starts teaching, her benefit shrinks by her teaching income. She doesn't get to stack the two the way she would under true own-occ. For some people, that's a fine trade for a lower premium. For a high earner whose whole plan is to keep producing income after a disability, it's a real limitation, and it's worth knowing which version you actually have. Here's why this hits physicians harder than almost anyone. The more specialized you are, the bigger the gap between can't do my specialty and can't do any job at all. A general internist has more fallback options than a surgeon or an anesthesiologist whose income is tied to a very specific skill set. The narrower and more procedural your specialty, the more a true own occupation definition is doing for you. This is also why specialty-specific language matters. Some carriers define your occupation by your board-certified specialty, which is the strongest version of own-occ for a physician. Across the carriers we work with, the major individual disability carriers, Principal, Guardian, Mass Mutual, Emeritus, and the Standard, generally offer a true own occupation definition of physicians, though the exact wording and how each one treats your specialty does vary carrier to carrier. That wording is the thing to read closely or to have someone read closely for you. So how do you tell what you've got? Two places to look. If your coverage is through an employer or a hospital group, pull the certificate and find the definition of disability. Group long-term disability very often uses an own-occ definition for the first 2 years, then switches to any-occ after that. That 2-year cliff catches a lot of doctors off guard because the policy that paid early in a claim can stop paying right when a long-term disability gets expensive. If you bought an individual policy yourself, check whether it says true own occupation or modified or transitional. The label on the brochure isn't always the definition in the contract. So read the actual definition, not just the marketing copy around it. And a quick note on taxes, because people always ask. If you pay the premiums yourself with after-tax dollars, the benefits are generally tax-free. If your employer pays them, the benefit's usually taxable, although tax situations do vary, so check with a tax professional about your own setup. Quick recap. Own occupation pays if you can't do your specialty, and it lets you earn elsewhere while you collect. Any occupation only pays if you can't do any job you're suited for, which for a physician is a very hard bar to hit. Modified or transitional sits in between and offsets what you earn. For most specialists, true own-occ is the definition that actually protects the income you trained for. If you want to see how your current policy reads or compare what the definition looks like across carriers, that's what we do at Seaworthy Insurance. We focus on disability coverage for physicians, dentists, CRNAs, and other high-income professionals. There's a link in the description to a full written breakdown on our site. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.